Hey y'all, welcome to my bed. Please make yourselves comfortable. Um, Snuggle up. I don't know how far I want to take this metaphor. You can take it as far as you want, or as t- as not far as you want. It's up to you. But this is the posture that I take often when I'm in my review mode. This the way that I am lying here, some sort of helps the blood flow to my critical faculties in a way that helps me to be semi-articulate most of the time, and that's what I intend to do when I talk about the book, not the movie, but the book entitled "The Talented Mr. Ripley" by Patricia Highsmith, which I have just finished reading and I have some opinions about. Y'all may remember the movie. I remember seeing the movie back in 1999. It was a star-studded cast. You know, a very good-looking cast, very handsome, very white. I might note, very white cast. A lot of good-looking white people in that movie. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Of course, there isn't. But in other places, you would hear that there's something wrong with that. But I think there's nothing at all wrong with that. And it was completely appropriate because that's pretty much what the story is about. It's about those kinds of people. The main character in The Talented Mr. Ripley, now getting back to the book, is the titular Mr. Ripley. His name is Tom Ripley, and he's this sort of vagabond character. He's this kind of this young man without much of a past who's just doing little things to scrape by. He's kind of like a petty criminal, but not violent. He runs little small scale frauds, pretending to be from the Internal Revenue Service and calling up people who are of sort of lesser means, and saying, our records show that you actually owe $50 more than you paid, so you can bring that by to my office, and we'll take care of it. And he has this whole scam that he's running at the beginning of the book, but and he's sort of you get the impression he's run other scams. He's on the lookout for the authorities, and when he sees an older gentleman following him through the streets, he gets a little concerned. He thinks that he's been found out, and but it turns out that's not the case at all. That in fact, this older man who greets him and talks to him turns out to be somebody who he kind of knew. Mr. Ripley, Tom Ripley, the main character of the story. He kind of knew in that he knew his son, and that they supposedly went to school together at Princeton. Now, I should add that Mr. Ripley runs in these high end sort of circles with these wealthy people, but he's really not one of them. He's an orphan. He was raised by somebody who apparently a woman who was apparently not very nice, and insulted and abused him often. And so he's very, he's somebody without much family, and without really any family to speak of. He only has a very strained relationship with this aunt that raised him, very cruelly. And he sometimes writes her letters, but that's the extent of him keeping in touch with her. And he just seems to sort of float by, run these scams, get to know people and pretend to be somebody that he isn't, and you know, and sort of scam his way in to in one way or another to these very in these various different types of ways. That's the man when we first meet him. He's around 25, and the story is set, I'm thinking, in the mid 50s, maybe early to mid 50s. So that's the setting. That's the time period when all this is happening. What happens in the beginning is this older man says, I've got a son who's in Europe. He's wasting his life away in Italy, and I know that you know him. You were schoolmates together, and so that's why I've tracked you down here, and I want to see if maybe you'd be willing to go over to Italy on my dime and try to talk him into getting some sense into his head, and see if he'll return to his family and assume his rightful place, because this older man is a man of means. I believe he runs a company or something. He's wealthy. He's a rather important figure in the community, and his son has his son Richard, who we know as Dickie in the book, Dickie Highsmith. He's has turned his back on all of that, and now he's living this kind of boho life in some Italian village, trying to be a painter, and this guy wants to. The angle is he wants to see if he can get him to come back, and Ripley has this. He possesses this charisma. He has this ability to sort of ingratiate himself into people's good graces, and get them to trust him, even though he really is a slippery character, and somebody very much not on the up and up. But on the other hand, what makes the depiction of this character so interesting is the fact that we really sympathize with him. We actually, rather than, or in contradistinction with the ways that this sort of character is often portrayed in fiction and in cinema, and the I don't know if you call them the narcissist or the sociopath or the psychopath or whatever. Somebody who does really bad things and gets away with. I haven't talked about the really bad things that he does, but eventually he will get there. So far it's just been more or less little bad things. But this guy Tom Ripley is actually a very sympathetic character, in the sense that we know that he really hungers for community, communion with others. He wants to have a family that's his own. He's aware of his rootlessness, and it bothers him, and he wants to feel like he belongs somewhere. So he takes this older man up on his offer, sails over to Europe, visits, drops in on Dickie and his girlfriend Marge, and kind of at first ingratiates himself into Dickie's into their circle, and tries to work his magic on Dickie, but Dickie doesn't really want to go back. He's pretty determined to just stay and do his thing, even though his painting is very second rate. He's not very good, but he just doesn't want to live the the kind of life that is expected of him in the United States. He wants to come over here to Europe and just chill and paint and you know, do do his thing, live the kind of life that he's interested in living. And of course, he gets regularly, you know, he has something like a trust fund, so he doesn't really have to work, you know, because he's from money, and his father is generous with his, you know, with paying him, but at the same time, you know, doesn't. I guess because he wants to sustain him, wants to make sure that he's still living and living well and all that. But he's kind of come to the end of his rope and wants him to return to America and be a responsible young man again. Again, we're talking about all these characters are like in their mid-20s or so, maybe mid to late 20s, 25, 26, 27, somewhere around there. So Tom also has a very ambiguous sexuality, and this is touched on very lightly in the book. It's touched on very subtly, but it's clear that Tom is homosexual. Although he basically doesn't do anything, but he has no interest in girls in a sexual way. And once he gets to know Dickie a little bit better, you get the impression that he sort of forms this crush on Dickie, but it's complicated because it's not just like a, you know, I want to be with Dickie as a, you know, I want him to be my boyfriend or anything like that. It's also he also envies what Dickie has, the fact that Dickie has this family, this supporting family, which he doesn't have, which he never had. And you know, again, the fact that he was sort of taken under the wing of this older man, and you know, he meets this older man's wife, Dickie's mom, who's kind of frail, and she's dying of leukemia, we learn. And they take him in, and they seem to like him, and they treat him, you know, they talk to him as if he's like a son to them, and he's very touched by that, very moved by that. So much so that he actually breaks down in tears at one point, you know, when he's by himself. So this is the insight that we get into this character, and it's what makes the story so engaging and so involving, is that we go on to see Tom, again, the talented Mr. Ripley of the title. We see him do terrible things, and I don't want to give away what he does, but I will say it's murder, literally murder. He literally commits murder twice, and he has his reasons for doing so. In both cases, but in neither case is it justified. Not that murder is ever justified, but we're not talking about self-defense. Is all I'm saying. So after he commits these murders, he goes on, sort of scamming his way through and pretending that he's innocent, and for a time, he pretends to be somebody that he isn't, and he gets this kind of charge out of feeling that he's now, you know, someone who is significant, not just this nobody, not just this you know, this pitiful orphan, you know, with no real family to speak of, but you know, he over the course of his European, his Italian idyll, he assumes this role that is pleasant for him to assume, and he starts frequenting parties, and you know, seeing people, and seeing, you know, upper crust people, and you know, it's not just that he's getting off on like the social attention or being looked up to or anything like that. It's also just this is somebody who really wants to belong somewhere and he's never been able to. So he's a very complicated character in that he does really bad things and he's not a good guy, but he's somebody that we're brought into sympathy with. And after he commits these murders, which again I'm not going to give away the specificity of the murders themselves, but after he commits these murders, he finds a way to, thread the needle and pretend that, do this or do that, keep the authorities at arm's length, or have these establish these alibis for himself that are false, but whatever, and just get people to see him as somebody who's not really to be suspected. And the crazy thing about it is, and the wild thing about reading this book, and I don't remember if watching the movie if we felt the same way or not. But in reading the book, you really want him to get away with it. You're really on his side. It becomes this very weird experience for the reader. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, in that sense, where in that famous novel, the young man Raskolnikov commits two murders. In his case, he has it's to prove some political point or other, but he gets away with it, and then eventually he gets taken in, but in that it's a little different, because in that book, it was the focus was on Raskolnikov's eventual salvation, his eventual repentance of the evils that he's done. And in The Talented Mr. Ripley, we don't really see, although there are times when we get the impression that Tom Ripley really would rather not have committed these murders, where he truly regrets having committed them. He doesn't really have the excuse of them being even of them being crimes of passion, or of some sort of overwhelming urge that takes over you if you're just really upset with someone for some pressing reason, like they say a crime of passion, like you find your wife or your husband is having an affair, and you just lose it. It's not a situation like that at all. It's the first murder is planned. It's actually contrived, and he pulls it off in just the way he intends to. But at the same time, we never are not allowed to see his vulnerability. And that's the craziest thing. That's the most interesting thing. The trippiest thing, I'll say, about this book is how it gets us, squarely on the side of Tom Ripley, the anti-hero, who's a double murderer and who's done all other kinds of bad things, but none as bad as the murders. That's a new level of infamy for him. But we want him to get away with it. We want him to elude the police authorities. There are a couple of moments, most of the time he's really playing it cool, but there's one moment where he accidentally says the wrong name, where he identifies himself in a way that would cast suspicion on him, and we go, oh no, he's in for it now. And there's other little things that happen here and there that seem to undermine his case. Like we think something's going to happen and he's going to face his comeuppance. But we're always relieved when, he finds a way to take these setbacks and make them work for him. And I think that's the talent, the talent that he has. That's the talent of the title. So there's so many different levels. This is about a man whose whose sexual identity is obviously not in the 1950s not acceptable. So it's something he has to hide. It's something he kind of even hides from himself, or doesn't think about with regard to himself. There's also just the fact that he doesn't belong anywhere, and yet he gets away with things, but in getting away with these things that he gets away with, there's something triumphant, but there's also something tragic, kind of ironically tragic in all of it, because he's still ultimately alone in the end. So those are my thoughts on Patricia Highsmith's famous novel, The Talented Mr. Ripley. I do recommend it highly. And if you have read it, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.